So now, relationship between patriotism and education. Now, they have been linked, coming from the time of um, Plato and Aristotle. Patriotism was a culmination of a moral and civic education, right? They had moral education, they had civic education. They expect the Greek societies expected patriotism from their citizens after this education. Also, democracy is a form of government by the people who must be educated and patriotic enough to participate in it. Isn't it? You have to, if you want to select a good leader, if you want to go and vote, you have to be patriotic enough to say, yes, my vote matters, go and vote. And you must be educated enough to say, to make a well informed choice of candidate, isn't it? And education and patriotism are essential for an organized society to function. Now, should patriotism be a part of education? So, some of the pros are, it's debatable. It is in some it patriotism. If it's a part of education, it gives you a sense of identity. I am Indian. I belong to this national space called India. It gives me a national pride. I belong to India. Okay, it makes clear our national values. Okay, we are a democratic, we are a secular country, we are a free country, and it fosters kinship. This is most seen. You go abroad, the first time, after some time, you see an Indian, you're so happy. जो हिंदी बोलेगा तो you're even more happy. It creates a kinship. It leads to the improvement of the country. ले चलो अपने भारत के लिए कुछ करते हैं. You have that feeling. You say, so patriotism leads to that. Now, some of the cons. Some of the cons of patriotic education is you are colored by the political and ideological leanings of authorities, therefore divisive. Supposing your college has a way of looking at things, and then the other college, your college, so you're going to be influenced by that. Are you largely influenced by a majority narrative? It's easier, people are lazy to think, so it's easier to take on the narrative of the majority, what people are thinking. It's so it's then sorry.
It's okay.
Okay. So glorification of history and culture. Okay, sorry. Just can I go back to the slide? So glorification of history and culture happens in the name of patriotism. You know, eh, so you're unable to question authority. Sometimes when there's a patriot, you're unable to question authority. Why, okay, now am I going to be considered unpatriotic if I say there should be no war? It discourages critical thought, and therefore then that confusion comes. Nationalism and patriotism. You Too much of patriotism does this to you. You're not critical. You're not thinking. People are shouting, "Go to war." Do you know what war entails? Do you know? It's easy to write on Facebook. It is easy to this thing. Has war ever touched you personally? I'm ashamed to say that my husband's coursemate died, Kargil martyr. We live just kilometers away from his house, and I just called her just because I needed a validation. I didn't call her. I didn't call her ever before. Shouldn't I have called her? No. So you see, even I'm even questioning myself. So imagine if there's a war that in between he will get Paramveer Chakra, he will get all the chakras, but she's lost her son. It doesn't matter to her. She told me in clear terms. I said, Auntie, can I meet you? She's not a bullshit person. I could make out. She said, I'm not well right now, so just send me a message with a photograph of yours. Meaning to say, hey, don't come here for that, which I appreciated. And I felt actually bad. So I said I was sort of maybe insensitive. Just for my own validation, I'm going and calling her. Anyway, now again, I put together some thoughts that came to my mind on what should, and I am of that opinion that yes, patriotism should be taught in education. But when I say it has a certain curriculum that I would like to see, it should teach civics, explain the terms sovereignty, secularism, democracy more practically. I've learned civics में मुझे याद है. So I know my fundamental rights, I know my fundamental duties. How many of you have done a practical course in it? How many of you all have understood that? No. History. I remember Mughal history. I remember the colonial history. But what they don't teach us in school is post-independence history from where our current conflicts arise, like Kashmir. Why isn't that there? So as an army wife, I understood that. I was not educated enough to understand. I went to school, but I did not know that there was Northeast, there was tribal wars actually. So then the conflict resolution, how I think these days in schools they have MUN or something, mock UN. I mean, I hear. So I don't know if they ask you to do conflict resolution or they just ask you to learn about countries. Again, it should define a citizen's role in keeping with the larger values of equality, liberty, and fraternity. You have a role there. Yeah. What is your role? When you say you are free, what is your role? When you say you are equal to somebody, what does it exactly mean? Understanding the role of this nation in this very globalized world. It's a very, so understand what nation is. Should we just hang on to nation? Should we start thinking larger? I mean, half of our families live here, half of our families live there. Chacha is married to Australian, Dadu is married to Argentinian. So we have to explain, understand the role of the nation in a very globalized world. Okay? Comparative culture, religion, and government. We need, within our own country itself, leave the world. Within our own country itself, compare religions, compare the culture, and compare governments. I would love to see a course within India because I know in the US and all they have comparative religion and comparative this. But India is such a huge nation in itself. So we need to understand the religions and the cultures here itself. Has there been, if there are studies being done, I'm sure they are, we are not seeing it. Political history, international relations. I mean, these days it's like, who would study international relations? Yeah, just somebody, but that, these are not popular subjects. The collective Indian political experience, this has to be taught. Well, we shouldn't shy away from it. We shouldn't shy away from this. Alternative views, project collaborations between education institutes and, defense institutions. Create think tanks, I remember this quote that I was reading from Thucydides, is that how? Thucydides. So in that he says, if you keep your scholars away from your warriors, you're going to fight like fool. I mean, I just paraphrase. I have it in my computer. It says you're going to fight like your thinking is done by cowards and your fighting is done by fools. And I am, as I was mentioning to Amit, I'm from the University of Hyderabad, and when I was in college, it was free-flowing. I felt so free because I was able to express what I wanted to, and luckily I had professors who understood. Maybe it was youthful idealism, maybe it was subtle thought, whatever it is, they accepted it. Maybe it was downright disrespectful sometimes, but they understood my dissent, they understood my alternative view. And I think that gave me that sort of given me some sort of courage to get out there and say it. To say sometimes I'm afraid to say things, but I eventually get around to saying it. That's because that's what my university taught me. That's what my university said. It's acceptable within these communities. And therefore, I think, the role we should, and this is again from pure observation, since I don't work for a educational institution, but I feel the educational institutions have so much to offer. Go out, create think tanks, have seminars, call people, understand different political views. Like when I was young and I was in college, we had this IAS officer who, JP Narayan, who came, so Lok Satta, and he came and he said, I was, and he was giving us a talk. And he said, I couldn't change the system from inside, so I had to step out. And I got up and I said, Sir, how, if you can't change the system from inside, how will you change it from outside? I was young, no? I was like, I was into it. And he says, No, you can't change. I said, That's so defeatist. And I walked out. I walked out. I literally know I walked out. And he was a guest, like I'm a guest, and like one of you walks out. So my professors didn't say a word. And I am so grateful for that one incident. It keeps coming back to, I feel bad now. Like I should have sat there, listened to it, been open-minded. But I forgive myself. It's youthful idealism and no, you can make a difference. You should fight whoever comes your way. But with wisdom, but with age comes wisdom, and you understand that collaboration works better than just abandoning something. You collaborate with each other. And especially the academic world has so much to offer, just sit, so get out into the real world, make this all happen. So with that, I have, since I'm a poet as well, can I have a poetry book? So I just like to end, I was like, suddenly when I was called on national television and I had to talk about peace, I was like, suddenly I'm talking about peace. But, I said, suddenly I'm talking about peace. Then my mind switched. No, I'm not suddenly talking about peace. I've been talking about peace from a long time ago. You see, I used to do some performance poetry. So I'm going to end today's talk with a poem that I performed 2-3 years ago. I had it by hearted then, but now I don't remember, so I'm going to read. World War III. I formally announced the beginnings of World War III. 1 and 2 were about allies, land, and greed. If a pigeon-chested, mustachioed man did World War II, a youthful idealist, now a middle-aged mother, will do 3. This is a war where there will be no blood, maiming, or death. A war where no parent will lose their child. This is my war, a war with words. I'm waging a war on the terrorists who make God their chief of war, who turn suicide bombers into martyrs. They don't understand an eye for an eye makes the world blind. I'm waging a war on the oppressors who make a living getting us to feel needy, making us so greedy we don't leave enough for farmer and weaver to earn and eat. I'm waging a war on a society that has laws on love. Love is love, and it must be free. Woman to woman, man to man, love is in all combinations and permutations. I'm waging a war on leaders who draft peace, send away peace missions taking sides. Peace is between two. Power belongs only to one. So turn the power over to peace and shame the gun. I'm waging a war on the idea of beauty, white creams on dark skin. Allure is evasive and unreal. I don't want beauty. I want to be art. I'm waging a war against science that's turning economic, that makes vials of medicine so expensive the sick are condemned to die and the handicapped left on a limb. I'm waging a war on corruption, on delayed justice, on a system that fails towards the most in need. Talk on TV is loose. The verbal debates need to be won, while the real deal is coming undone. I'm waging a war on behalf of the trees and the seas. The Arctic is melting and the earth getting warmer. Our machines have weeded out the green cover. Carcasses of fish float on oily ocean water. I promise a better world with World War III. And like a president once said, if you are not with me, you are against me. I'm a middle-aged mother. Come, be with me. Thank you.
comments from any one of you? Any thoughts you want to share? Questions you want to ask? Give us something.
Uh, so, when it comes to patriotism, like I personally also believe that, a collective patriotism is something like, when you have to agree to the others. And what I feel is like, when I go to the road, I don't do anything bad to my country, and it is like, you know, keeping it clean, and not spreading your waste. And if I'm living in a colony, so I'm taking care of the waste of what I am producing. This is what patriotism is for me. uh, of course, war is one of the things, and we like in our like this is the reality, and we can't just get away with things. But war is also like
Just a second. What a wonderful time to come. Samosas are ready. No, it's light aside. Okay, sorry. Sorry, Amit, sorry.
Yeah. So this is my personal belief that war brings no peace to anybody, and also the victory. Because when two countries are at war, or any country is at war, they just lose. Like nobody wins. Our soldiers die, our people suffer, economy suffers. We go like 10 years back. We have been starting doing all these things. So yeah.
I just want to make a point. So, with patriotism also comes sensitization and awareness amongst the community, and that starts from your home itself.
Absolutely.
So, it's my personal experience when the Pulwama attack was happening. So, I had friends, I was studying in America, so I had friends who were from Pakistan, and they are really good friends. And suddenly, my mom and my aunts told me, you should stop talking to them because they are from Pakistan. And I myself, being a lawyer also, I don't believe in war. So I was like, and they asked me, what's your opinion about war? And I said, I don't believe in war. Where is it coming from? So my mom got really, she wanted to know why. And I believe that I was lacking at that point because I was not explaining her why I'm not going for war. And when I sat and explained her the scenario and the history of why this Kashmir issue, conflict, she got it so well, and she said, no, there should be no war. And I was very amazed with the fact that if I start that from my own house, how much greater impact will it make? Because then she started, sharing that thought process with her friends and other people. So I believe in awareness and sensitization of community, which is important as an individual, and so that's my take on it.
Very nicely said. Yeah, thank you. I think, thank you very much for this very passionate, very personal, and very thoughtful presentation. This was a voice that obviously needs to be heard, and I suspect all of us were hearing it very carefully, very at a very deeper level. I want to play for a moment a sort of a devil's advocate, and I say underline sort of a devil's advocate partly because we have to give voice to something that may not be voiced in this conversation, so that we understand the other voice. That other voice was missing because no one challenged Ms. Abrahams, and that needs to be taken into account if our own arguments in favor of certain stance in life are persuasive enough, right? Now, it's very well and good, some would argue, to be a pacifist, express oneself in ways that are conventionally seen as anti-war stances, and challenge the war machinery, as it were, whether it's a government of the day, an industry, or a media that seems to be driving population towards certain sentiment that one sees as antithetical to long-term or even in the short-term larger interests of the people. These are absolutely, undeniably a valid stance. It has a long history. It goes back to Thucydides, to our times in intellectual history of mankind, the recorded history. The sentiment must have prospered even in pre-Socratic days, and earlier times too, because it sounds to me so humane, a way to position oneself in a world of richness. But on the other side, in at least last couple of hundred of years, we have this virus called nation state. It's a virus from my point, but may not be for others. For others, it is an organizing principle. It gives coherence, like you need a university has to be organized. So it has certain instrumental purpose to organize a nation state. The validity of that has been by and large accepted by reasonable people. With this, first the nationalism and the construction of nation state in the 19th century, nationalism that heightened and peaked at World War I, you have a confusion of concepts, the nationalism versus the patriotism, and a tendency to aggregate interests of groups at a national level and claim to speak on their behest. And sometimes we can't simply understand what's going on inside these black boxes, Pakistan, India, United States, etc. So there's always a tendency pushed and pulled by vested interests, the industry, war industry, the manufacturers, like Honeywell, where it works. I mean, I don't mean that. It is a war machine. The economy itself is a war machine. The media doesn't do because they sincerely believe what they're doing. They simply are profiteering. The filmmakers are profiteering, right? So because of this complex nature of the way nation state functions, there is always a chance that someone might get more greedier than the confines of their national boundaries. So the case has been made that we should be prepared to fight the wars. And pacifism in that sense is seen as a pernicious effect on such a sentiment, right? So that is where the tension is really. It's not about whether war by itself a good thing. Most people will say, well, we don't want war. The question is there a deleterious effect of being pacifist on the war machine itself? Would it undermine national efforts to defend national territories, national ideals, national interests, however you construct them, right? And in that sense is the conflict, genuine conflict emerges. Whereas the superficial conflict can emerge elsewhere, I'm saying a genuine conflict between two people who equally seems to understand a whole range of things might emerge. And there comes the role of a soldier. Will this pacifism act like a virus on the mind of a soldier who might behave like a coward rather than a strong person? Now again, this is a very long tradition, long history. One can go back in at least last 100 years as to what is the proper attitude for a soldier in war. If he is a pacifist, can he still fight well? Now this can't be settled philosophically or intellectually. But what we know, what I can narrate to you, let me go back to our own Kargil war. I had a privileged vantage point of watching Mr. Vajpayee, the whole range of these dignitaries arrived and I was their host. I was asked to take care of all these arrangements. And I used to spend a lot of time with Fernandez, hovering over him to make sure that he gets his tea or biscuits or whatever he wants.
Sorry, Krish, I'm not sure everybody knows your background. You may want to. You were posted at
Srinagar during the Kargil war, and I was managing a range of things. Anyway, so the point I'm making is that I did not see either in Mr. Vajpayee and in the larger discourse that emanated from at that time, or Mr. Fernandez. I saw Fernandez taking a paper and rewriting the press statements he will issue to make sure that he doesn't overstate or exaggerate or give rise to unnecessary controversies, conflicts, and don't shame Pakistan, name them in a way that they become more rigid and unnecessarily, create conflict. They had such wisdom and maturity, at least to the extent I noticed, and we could see if you open up the statements issued by the government then and compare that with the statements that the government today issues, the way they come across to the media, you will see the difference that I am making. I lived that period, I lived this period, and I watched the media at that time and this time. Now, to come to the point about the soldier, his attitude, I never thought of Pakistan, and many of my contemporaries never thought of Pakistan as some sort of machine where everyone is out to eat Indians, etc., etc. But I would have gladly shot someone if I had to, and I know many people who would do that. They will do their duty. They have an obligation. They have taken oath like every person. Their motives could be varied. But in a conflict situation, when they are asked to defend and to deliver on their oath, like anyone else who is thoughtful would do that. So I do not see a conflict in being someone who desires peace in the world and someone who would willfully, religiously do his duty. I think these are not contradictory to me. And there are a lot of illustrations of what I'm saying in expressions of the World War I poetry. A lot of people from Oxford and Cambridge went to the war at that time. They didn't hate the Germans, but they fought them. And they came back. Some of them survived. Many died. Most died. And those who came back, they became writers, poets, journalists, and they gave expressions to their feelings and thoughts. There's a lot of pacifist literature and poetry, Ogden and others, that came out of World War I. So this virulence with which we see Pakistan today, to my mind, for a soldier today, it is harmful. It's a harmful, I see it as a harmful effect on being an effective soldier when if you buy into this discourse and you are a soldier at the front, because you will be paralyzed by your hatred. You would not be a thoughtful to operate normal. You will be a mad person going amok in time of war. Unfortunately, our soldiers are very disciplined. They go through rigorous training. So they are unlikely to be affected in a serious way, but I see a corrupting influence of the political establishment today on the separation between the politics and military life. There were always attempts, but I think in the past 5 years, particularly this regime, and I do not want to get into politics, I only speak because I don't support any party, I don't even have a voter card. I say this has been a very harmful, very dangerous trend whose consequences we might see long after. Because the way today's military chiefs are speaking to the media, as though they're speaking for the government, defending a government's policy of which they have no role. For example, Rafael. When the air chief speaks about Rafael, I do not understand what role he had in firstly doing what the government did. He had none.
Yes, absolutely.
By definition, he had none. But why is he defending the government? By definition, thoughtfully, our constitutional order was so structured to keep the military out of the government itself. Military is not part of the government by definition, technically. That distinction has been lost now. Service headquarters are distinct entities. They are not part of the government. They do not have the rights, privileges, or the obligations of the government. But that distinction has been lost. The military is speaking as though they are part of a government and they're collectively responsible for the government's action. They're not. So this pernicious impact of how this discourse, to me, I could be wrong, derived from political greed, crass, crude political greed is driving this. And we got to be conscious of this context. I mean, it's
Yes,
very good
exactly.
to talk about. As far as patriotism, I have only one last thing to say. For me, this again is a thing that I can't speak much about. I have to leave it. It's best lived. Best, as Amit says, lived prosaically, in an ordinary sense, in an everyday sense of it. To care for one another,
Yes.
to show affection. I do not see any problem if, say, Indian cricket team is playing in some country, Pakistan, elsewhere, without having to hate Pakistan. I love my cricket team and I celebrate its success. That to me is not a problem. I don't watch cricket, but if I were to do it, I would say, like I support a friend irrespective, right? That's relationship. Because we are closely knit together, we have shared understanding, shared culture. I would support you because of that, not because I have to hate somebody in that context, right? So to me, patriotism means that I care to you, I care for my neighbor, and it is sort of a religion. It is best lived rather than spoken about. I mean, people should speak about, I'm saying. I would rather prefer, this is also a way of expressing, right? I'm saying there are multiple ways you give expression to your religiosity, your sense of patriotism. Is one could be that I simply want to say, look at me, I am patriotic, but I will not tell you I am one. Right? I'm not going to speak about my patriotism to you or lecture you about it. I just leave it.
Yeah.
And that patriotism is unlikely to kill. It's only likely to be generating in spirit and embracing. The reason I say this is India, Pakistan, if you look at 1950s, immediately after our partition, there was a rupture, and then you study that period of intercourse between India and Pakistan from government to government level. There were attempts to give face-saving opportunities to the other side, on both sides. Today, Modi goes, I hit the face of that Pathan son, I broke his bones, and I'm back. Publicly. Now he has no face saving. Someday he might get mad, and he has a nuclear weapon. You could get mad too. What's the nature of our discourse? Why can't we be more respectful when we disagree, even with Pakistan or China or whatever? Why? Of course we know what it is. It's a desperate attempt to gain power, to regain power. That's all I see it. And why should we, you, me, and others should be so blindsided about these faults? I do not understand. I see madness. I want to shut my ears. I want to close my eyes. I want to tune out of television channels. That's where, at this age, being a soldier, I feel sick. With that happy note.
I think we have a question from the audience.
Sorry. Anyone else?
Just use one of the mics. Just use one of the mics.
I think I'm audible.
Just have to
We record, so that she gets it.
center. Yeah.
Okay, I belong to the generation of Doordarshan where they used to show Mile Sur Mera Tumhara, and that was patriotism for me. And there were many good documentaries which we had seen. There was nothing which is called as a divide back then. But then I have been missing patriotism for a good time after 2000. Because I've seen even at school level, there were many things which were missing. And I would say, without a doubt, that Indians have become less patriotic. As in, I have my own experiences. But my generation, we did not even ask the other person his surnames or his religion even before interacting with him. That was the kind of camaraderie which we had. Probably because then this media and everything was not there. And that kind of camaraderie is something which went missing because of the radicalism which has come into it. And I think we're confusing patriotism with radicalism, because radicalism is something which is hurting us worse. And that is something which is there on all the fronts. As you see religion, you see education, everywhere, wherever you see, these things are there. And I think that is something which we should look into. War, the second part of my question is, war is something which I think at times becomes essential also. It's not that, I am pro-war, but at times, there are situations into which we walk into where war could be the only answer because the other person starts seeing you, like Sir said, and the morale of the soldier is something which we should consider, but more than that, the extent of harm which the other party is inflicting upon you is also something which you need to see.
Yeah, there could be what is known as just war thesis to the extent
Exactly.
that conditions meet the just war.
Exactly.
I think one has to sometimes legitimize that
Exactly.
as an unfortunate contingent event that one did not wish but one has to endure,
Exactly.
not as a celebration
Yeah,
of.
like Mahabharata also happened after a lot of failed negotiation. After then it happened. So that's exactly where I think our country is also right now, because Israel is a chapter we don't want to repeat.
Israel?
As in the way Israel reacts to its neighbors. After any act of aggression which it faces, we don't, and per se we are not that kind of a country, and we have been we have been suffering right from that time. The Kashmir issue has been into our knowledge. So that is something which I thought I could discuss, and I just wanted to know your opinions about.
No, I'm sure Ms. Abraham has a lot to say about that. Thank you. I think there's what I understand. Let me understand your question. You're suggesting that India somewhat, because of this lack of deep sense of strength, a feeling of strength, as many would say that we have been always conquered, invaded, colonized, kept weak, suppressed, etc., etc. So you're in a way giving kind of a expression to that sentiment, right? Am I getting you right?
What's your question? Can you
I
ask me the
want to
question?
know about your opinion that don't you think there should be a moderate approach to all these things rather than just saying that no, we don't want a war, we rather should go peaceful, and that patriotism is something which should rather be embraced and said yes, it is must. For example, I am a firm supporter of the national anthems being played in cinema theaters.
Me too.
Yeah, because I think
We not so. We are
I'll tell you why. Because my 6-year-old son, the kind of orientation he got about national anthem in school was not the kind of orientation he used to see when all of the people in the theatre used to stand up and sing. And that was a chapter for both of, as in myself and my wife, that we thought that, okay, this might be important because the kind of orientation that this guy is having is very important. And that went missing, believe me. In my batchmates also, for example, this might be very vague, but again, when it comes to tax paying, all the patriotism goes into drain. People do not even think about patriotism then. Probably because we are not channelizing the right patriotism or the right feeling. And I started with.
I think let me just
Yeah.
capture what I understand so that we can. It's a very important point. You're saying, isn't there a case to be made for us to believe in something outside of ourselves, something that is broader, more aggregate,
Exactly.
and what
Something which is balanced.
at a national level, and be reasonable at the same time, right? And all these expressions of standing up for national anthem, these are just expressions, instances of that, useful perhaps from your sense to educate your child. So I think that's is what I understood is sentiment.
Yeah. So basically, your question to me is patriotism should be a part of our lives, right?
Yeah, it should be.
That's what I'm saying as well.
And radicalism is something which should be discussed, and probably people be made aware about it. That people
Exactly.
should listen from.
So I'm sorry, were you there when I went through my slides?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So you would have seen that I have covered all these points there.
I like
Yeah.
the slide with just the one which you just passed. Yeah, this.
Sorry. Yeah.
This is something which I was very interested in because this is something which should be taken up by even the education boards of this country.
Your university to start with. So
But it should start right at the schooling, I guess.
yes.
Exactly.
See, you age appropriate. Age appropriate. You have to like for your 6-year-old son. Yeah, Janagana Mana is good enough. But when they come to 8, 9, 10, I think they have that much of, because right now I know my friends, sons and daughter, you know, they're active participants in this mock UN, which I find very interesting. It's a nice way to learn. So I asked them, so according to me, I might be wrong here, all they do is, talk about one country, talk about, you are from Pakistan, I am from Uganda, so we talk about our countries, we exchange notes, we know what's happening, and it's over. But when they can come, create a mock UN, they can also start, we can start teaching them about these, what are the conflicts India is facing from 70 years. Isn't it, I mean, isn't it so, according to me, I'm not oversimplifying. See, I'm not oversimplifying Kashmir issue. I have, oversimplification. I'm not oversimplifying it. But what I'm trying to say is 2 generations of Indians have gone. And we are still having that same problem here. My grandfather just died when that problem started. Then my father also saw that a bit of that problem. Kashmir jaake apples bhi le aaye. Then he realized ki jannat gayi hai. Then I was there. Kashmir, Kashmir, Kashmir. No, you cannot go to Kashmir. What is Kashmir? Yeah, some brave Swiss people went and got kidnapped over there. I remember this case so well. And then now my son. And now I have to explain to my son we have a Kashmir issue. Isn't it a shame? I mean, I really don't want to. Isn't what I mean? And then my son will tell his son that we have this problem. I mean, where are we? Where are we? Are we calling ourselves educated? So my point is that, explain things to your citizens. Explain to your children what is India pehle.